Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-host TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
It's going good, man. Obviously, we have a big topic today in terms of talking about the playoff race that's taking place. I think it's going to be a lot of seeding manipulation taking form in these last couple of weeks, whether it's trying to make your position within the NBA draft lottery or the type of team that you want to face in the first round of the playoffs. It's going to be interesting to see who we kind of think are like the contenders versus pretenders in a way. It's not the exact topic we're doing, but that is kind of us. Today is going to be a lot of us getting an understanding of who we think is a real threat to win the championship. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts because we haven't really had a real conversation about power rankings in a while. You do them every single week, right? But
I just did one of the day of recording today, yeah.
Yeah, but we haven't really sat down and had a conversation around the topic of power rankings in quite some time. So it'll be interesting to get your thoughts specifically as somebody who's kind of been having to keep track of how he feels about these teams over the course of the last, 20 weeks.
Yeah, 100%. And you're gonna tell, like, with the way like my power rankings go, I had to like move some teams around here and there like recently, but it's a good indication of where you're going to see what we're going to talk about here today, which is, like Jay said, deciphering who are the true contenders for the title this year, and kind of who are those who are kind of like is kind of there for the ride and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking about that. We're 3 quarters into the season, so we're only like 20 games away from the playoffs. So there's a lot to discuss, and I feel like in the past we've talked a lot about kind of the bottom of the barrel, the bad teams. Jay, we're going to talk about the cream of the crop today, and it's going to be a very, very fun episode. But before we do that, we do have to plug our socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Knockdown J. Those links will be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, remember to follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. That's where you can find the picks, the news, the series, and all that good stuff. You can find that TikTok and Instagram. In terms of the podcast networks, remember to subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and Apple. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember to hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you don't catch some of our daily content that we put up on our Instagram and TikTok, you can find those on YouTube Shorts too. Maybe not the Daily NBA picks, but you can find a lot of the other series and videos that we do over there. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Yeah, this one's heavy. Like I said, this one's heavy because now that we're coming down to the last final stretch of the regular season, every game matters, and where these teams stand is going to be really important in terms of how we view them. Because skip it a bean, bro. I don't think anybody has truly separated themselves as like the go-ahead favorite this year the way we kind of felt there was some potential at the beginning of the year. So things are a lot closer now than they were even a few months ago.
100%. And we're gonna be doing this quarterly report style where we go through the top 6 teams in the West, top 6 teams in the East, and kind of see how we feel about them as true title contenders. And if you guys have not watched these NBA YouTube videos, we're going to be putting them in some sort of tier list, where the top tiers are, the S tiers, the absolute cream of the crop, and then all the way down to F. If we dare put someone in F as a title contender from each of the top 6, we will put them in the F tier as well. Jay, should we start off in the West? Should we start off over West?
Yeah, let's give the West some favor. We know we're East Coast boys when it comes to how we talk about our teams, but like let's give the West some respect for once and start them off for the pod.
100%. And we're gonna start off with the number 1 team in the West, Jay, the team that everyone wants to talk about, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Second best record in the West. In the entire league right now. They are 53-11. And they are basically like just finally getting to full health. Of course, Chet Holmgren came back last month. They obviously have had their injury issues with Isaiah Hartenstein and other guys. But Jay, they are looking dangerous. They're looking healthy now. What tier would you put them as a title contender? At this point in the season.
Look, man, this is an S tier level title contender for me personally. You have to look at what they have in terms of their overall team construction and focus on the fact that they have everything that we normally think of when you think of a title level team. Do they have an MVP caliber player? Yes. Do they have a top 5 offense and defense this year? Yes. Do they have a secondary co-star that's capable of being able to pick up slack when their main star might have a rough night? Yes. Do they have a building block of an identity in order to lean on throughout not only a 7-game series, but multiple series on a way to make a championship run? Yes, this is a team that is built off of a defensive identity and an offensive mind led by the play of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is obviously, one of the leading, if not the leading candidate for MVP right now. The Oklahoma City Thunder have the perfect construction of everything that you would normally associate with a championship caliber squad. And that's so crazy to think, knowing how young they are, that they are this far along in their championship rebuild. But it's real, bro. It's as real as it gets.
Man, when you talk about just a team that checks off every single box, maybe besides, the actual playoff experience themselves, because the farthest they've gone with this core is the second round last year. But in terms of every single other box, in terms of depth, in terms of starting five, in terms of an MVP caliber player, a defensive backbone, they have everything. Elite level coach, they have that. Jay, and the thing is, about this team, yes, we talk about their 53-11. Yes, they are the number one defense, number four offense in the league. Jay, this hasn't been all peaches and daisies for the Thunder all season long. They missed Chet for November to February at this point. I think they missed a good 3 months. They start off the season without Isaiah Hartenstein. You've had some time missing with people like Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace. But Jay, they still stand number one in the West. And not just number one, they are number one by 12 games. They are absolutely no joke. And the fact that they're able to maintain this level of play with a guy in and out here, with a guy in and out there, you can see that even with some guys being taken out the roster, it is very much a next man up mentality. And people are comfortable doing that because this is not just a young team, Jay, like you mentioned. This is a young team that's played together. This is not Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, but the other Jalen Williams has been here for a couple of years now. Ousmane Dieng has been here a couple of years now. You've had people like Cason Wallace, who's been in the second year. This is a young team. Yes, they have a lot of talent up and down the roster, but this is a group of guys that know how to play together, who have been in the system for a while. I can't find really any holes with this team. We talked about how we couldn't find any holes with this team in the offseason. And now that we're seeing this really play out, I can't really find holes besides the fact that we haven't seen them go further into the playoffs, and now we're kind of anointing them as, the number one the contenders out there in the West.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that we have to throw out, too, is just the overall compatibility of Isaiah Hartenstein with Chet Holmgren, right? That's one of those things that we still have a very small sample size of when you think about the totality of the season in comparison to what we think they're going to be able to do together in the postseason. You have to think about some of the teams that are in the Western Conference that will be featured on a regular basis that you have to essentially go through if you're talking about being considered as a real championship team. Obviously, the most notable one is the guy who's, second in the MVP conversation for most people, which is Nikola Jokic. They had to throw three bodies, being the Minnesota Timberwolves, they had to throw three bodies at him last year just to contain him. And granted, they did a great job at being able to do so. But between different combinations of Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert and Nas Reed and Cat, they had to do a lot to put a whole lot of pressure on Nikola Jokic. Now, we saw in the most recent matchup between OKC and the Denver Nuggets that they don't necessarily need as much in order to keep Nikola Jokic at least relatively at bay. It's kind of hard to contain the guy, right? That's not really the goal. It's kind of how you say the same thing with Kevin Durant. He's gonna get his 30. It's just how hard does he go get it, right? It's kind of similar when you talk about Nikola Jokic in terms of not just the points but just overall impact on the game. I think they do have the overall personnel to deal with teams like a Denver Nuggets. So the real question for them just is are they ready for the stage, right? I think that's what it always comes down to at this point. When you look at everything where a team is this young, I mean, the Oklahoma City Thunder. I saw an interesting stat on ESPN that said the Oklahoma City Thunder's roster average age is actually a year younger than the average age of the Auburn Tigers basketball team in college.
Yeah.
That's how youthful this team still is, even now, with these kind of players slowly but surely getting themselves anointed into an echelon where Chet seems like a rising star to making. Jalen Williams is a guy who could dang near be all NBA this year. We know what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does. And you just go down the list of guys that you also respect within this league, just for what they've done. Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, I think that somebody who's been highly underrated but highly favored is Casey Wallace, who's been able to step up through the first 2 years of his career and kind of fill a hole that they desperately needed as like a secondary off guard that could do some stuff on ball as well. Like, this team has a lot of, again, we keep using the phrase building blocks that give the indication that like this is a team to fear. The question now is on the biggest thing, how dangerous can they be? We saw glimpses of it last year, like you mentioned beforehand. But the question now is like, you're the hunted. You know what I mean? The expectations were lower last year. This year, everybody came in, and a lot of people viewed Oklahoma City Thunder as like the Oklahoma City Thunder with what they did this summer as like not the runaway favorites to come out of the Western Conference, but a lot of people had them at the top. And so when you're the hunted, how do you act knowing that you're already a young team that's not necessarily had the most experience under these bright lights? That's going to be interesting to see.
100% is going to be definitely interesting to see. It's also going to be interesting to see if like how they will play against a potential, we talked about it last week. If they go up against like if the Clippers go up against this sort of team where you have more of a, a veteran sort of lineup, a coach that's been there deep into the playoffs before, like these sort of teams that have these playoff caliber players already. How do you perform against that? And even though it might be a foregone conclusion that they make it to the finals, we've seen teams where they go on these like crazy runs in the regular season, but then they're inexperienced show. So like you mentioned, it's going to be interesting to see like if their playoff experience is going to waver. That's going to help them waver like when we get to the postseason. But as of right now, from what we see, it feels like they should be the number one team to look out for in the West. And that's why we both have them in the S tier. Jay, moving on to the number 2 team in the West. And we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. We talked a lot about them last week. They were on their little streak. Unfortunately, LeBron James is going to be sidelined 1 to 2 weeks because of a groin injury. Jay made a video about that on the TikTok. We'll go check that out. But Jay, which tier would you put them in terms of the 2 title contenders? I know this is definitely a lot different pre-Luka Doncic trade, but do they skyrocket that high up for you after seeing what they've done so far?
So I have to put them in the A tier. This is one of those teams that I think you have to heavily consider the same way we always did for years when it came to a guy like LeBron James being paired with Anthony Davis, right? We always came up with the phrase of, as long as you have 2 top 5 to top 10 players on the same team, you have to consider them as a threat in a 7-game series, right? Because there comes a point where X's and O's can only carry you but so far, depth can only do but so much, and it just comes down to who has the most talent, right? Or who is the most dangerous when you're talking about putting the ball in their hands in big moments. And you have 2 of the most high-performing players in the league this season alone, let alone what we know their track records are, right, in Luka Doncic and LeBron James. The question that I have is specifically, what is LeBron James going to look like when he comes back? This is not his first groin injury, and we've seen him have lingering injuries over the course of his career with the Los Angeles Lakers in particular. Always been a mixed bag in terms of what he looks like when he comes back. I think the other thing is, very opposite to the Oklahoma City Thunder argument, is how does the impact of not having a strong center depth rotation impact them in the playoffs in the Western Conference, given the fact that they are light in the middle in the way that like a Oklahoma City Thunder team, for example, has significant depth there, right? So that's going to be the most interesting thing. If we're talking about putting faith in Luka Doncic and LeBron James, I don't have anybody else that we're going to have a conversation about today. I don't have faith in anybody else in terms of a tandem more than those 2 of anybody we're going to talk about today, whether that's the East or the Western Conference. If we're just talking about individual performance ability on the big stage, that duo is going to be my number 1 duo in the postseason if we're ranking them. The
100%,
rest is where it gets spotty. That's the thing, though. The rest is where it gets spotty. And the Lakers have been able to win series off the strength of their 2 best players before, that we've seen it. But this is a different Western Conference. I feel like we say that all the time, but it really, really is a different looking Western Conference. And I don't know how strong a 2-man lineup, essentially, and it's not just those 2, but those are the 2 bell cows you're going to be relying on here. I don't know how much of a carry job that could do with you being light in the middle and them still being a team that does not have it. I mean, it depends. The question is, who is Austin Reeves to you in the postseason? Who is Austin Reeves to you as a tertiary offensive creator?
100%. I also have them in the A tier, And it's heavily carried by LeBron and Luka Doncic, and that's a huge reason why. Is because these are playoff raisers. These are guys that do not, plateau in the playoffs from their regular season numbers. These are guys who are critically known for be able to step it up on the big stage. And I think what's going to help them too is one, this LeBron James injury. It's going to suck because you do want to have him continue to develop that partnership with Luka Doncic. But at the same time, having a wrestling LeBron going into the playoffs could definitely be beneficial for the Los Angeles Lakers. And also, you know how Luka gets comfortable when it's by himself with a bunch of guys surrounding, and playing off of him. I brought up the freaking Luka, the on and off numbers from Luka. If Luka's the only guy in the court with the rest of the team, they have historically high offensive numbers. He gets to build that chemistry with a lot of the other guys, and they get to understand what it feels like to be part of a Luka Doncic system. It was hard to kind of balance that with LeBron James on the court, but now they get to truly be immersed in it for the next 1 to 2 weeks while LeBron James is out. So those two alone have me confident that they're going to be in the A tier in terms of Western Conference contenders. I don't know how this defense is going to work, trying to leave kind of the worst guy on the court open for a lot of time, because that's what they've been kind of doing with the fact that they don't have a true, reliable center out there. But in terms of, Jackson Hayes being a lob option, he's been good there. Don't Connect being able to play off of Luka as a 3-point shooter. People are starting to find their roles within that system. And like you said, compared to the Thunder, the depth is going to be an issue, and it's going to be interesting to see how they do against other teams. But at the same time, this is where you play your best guys anyway. You don't play your 9 to 10 man rotation, so maybe that does play in the Lakers' favor. But I still put them at such a high tier just for those, like you said, that duo involved in LeBron James and Luka Doncic.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, too, is even though there's not a deeper rotation in the playoffs, I think one of the main things that they're going to rely on is the safety net of the fact that there will never be a time where there's not LeBron James or Luka Doncic on the floor at all times. That's something that they've been able to thrive within over the last couple of weeks. But it's something that in the postseason is going to be really effective, because at the end of the day, the Jokic's of the world have to sit for a little while. The SGAs of the world still have to sit for a little while. Right, when you go down the list of teams that are going to be up in contention against a Lakers roster, everybody has that lead superstar that is going to have to take a seat. And the question is, who is their tertiary or even secondary superstar on ball that can be dangerous enough to keep things afloat while they have to take that 1, 2, even 3 minutes worth of rest within any given quarter? This is a team that can pretty much keep their foot on the gas at all times, because you have a high-level savant kind of player at the helm, whether it's LeBron James or Luka Doncic on the floor at all times. They literally
both guys are willing to pass the ball too.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me, right? Give me 1 second. The biggest thing for me is that when you go into the postseason and you think about teams that are going to be dangerous in terms of a championship run, the Lakers are the only team that I see, specifically in the Western Conference for sure, that you can say always have an MVP on the floor at all times. That's something that not too many teams can hang their hat on, and I think that's something that makes them special enough to have to fear them, even if their roster construction makes you feel a little worrisome about them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, they trade for Luka Doncic, that automatically raises their floor, especially in terms of playoff contention. So I feel confident in them. The other guys, I mean, they're looking at freaking Austin Reeves also having a career season as well. He's having a great season overall. So if he's able to be that guy to be kind of a release valve for both LeBron and Luka, then this team could be even more dangerous than we thought. It just depends, again, like you mentioned, how much do you trust Austin Reeves? I'm not sure, but seeing what we've seen so far, this Lakers team is already ahead of schedule, and I'm excited to see how they're going to do come to postseason. Jay, the number 3 team in the West right now, possibly the Lakers kryptonite, at least they were in the past, the Denver Nuggets. They did lose to the Thunder yesterday pretty badly. It was a close game into the fourth quarter. It's just that fourth quarter was absolutely nasty from the Thunder. They got the number 2 guy in MVP right now. He's having a phenomenal season. They're finally starting to figure out what the rest of the supporting cast. Jay, what tier are you putting the Denver Nuggets in?
So I'm putting the Nuggets in the A tier with the Lakers. This is one of those where I feel like at the end of the day, their biggest question is always going to just be how much gas does Jamal Murray have in a postseason? When that dude is on one, he's on one. And we've seen it time and time again. The other side of it, though, is when Jamal Murray struggles, he really struggles, dog.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things where I think rising to the occasion in the postseason is going to be the most important thing. This is a team that always seems to hang around and is not going to go out lightly, right? I don't see the Denver Nuggets being a team that gets swept or anything like that. And as long as you see them having a puncher's chance in any given series, the overbearing needle mover is going to be the fact that Nikola Jokic is the best player on the planet, right?
Yes.
So I think they obviously get at least A tier off the strength of Nikola Jokic by themselves. My biggest question mark personally is what Jamal Murray are we going to get in the postseason? Because if we get the one we're used to in terms of postseason play, then we're talking about something different. And the second thing to me actually is how effective defensively is this team going to be in the postseason? Because that's the other thing that I'm very worried about is their ability to guard in the postseason this year. They don't have the same kind of versatility and switchability that they've had in years past in terms of being able to kind of cover a full 94 feet and do so in a way where it seems like they always have a tough cover regardless, right? That's kind of the versatility that like a KCP, for example, provided for them. So their defensive capabilities and like the overall play of Jamal Murray are like the two big things that I'm like, if we get even like the 8 out of 10 version of both of those, this team is like right there with the Oklahoma City Thunder for like, yo, they're going to be a problem. If they are closer to that like 6 and below out of 10, I mean, we just saw OKC dunk on them for almost, by almost near 20-point blowout. Like, we know what Oklahoma City is capable
of. 100%. My thing with the Nuggets going into this postseason, I also have them in the A tier. But for me, two things like you mentioned. You mentioned the defense. They are 19th right now in defensive rating. This is not the same team. And we've talked about how they've lost guys over these last few years. These are guys that are freaking damn good on the defensive end, whether it's Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, who provided something on that end, KCP this past summer. But they have the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic. And they potentially have a top 5 player in the world in the playoffs in Jamal Murray, and he has shown that in multiple seasons at a time. The problem is he ran out of gas last year. When they were up against the Minnesota Timberwolves, this man ran out of gas. Also due to the fact that the freaking Timberwolves guards were freaking hounding him the entire series. But it's true that he did run out of gas. He's had a very good 2025, probably December 2024 onwards for the season after a very slow start. So you could see, the flashes of playoff Jamal Murray coming. And I think that is like something that you can rely on come playoff time because he's been able to do it years past. The defense is what I'm worried about, and also when it comes to matchups. Because if this team has to face the Golden State Warriors in the second round, or even round 1, that's gonna be a problem for the Denver Nuggets, especially with the experience the Warriors has, and now the addition of Jimmy Butler, the guy that you were trying to trade for. That's gonna be an issue. But I could see a path for them making it to the finals if they get to stave off the Thunder until the conference finals. But I will still put them in A tier just because of the Nikola Jokic factor itself and the fact that you probably have a top 5 guy if Jamal Murray is playing a playoff Jamal Murray for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that you have to consider as one of the best teams, not just in the Western Conference, but like...
And they've been there before. They've been there, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you had to rank teams overall in terms of championship equity, I still think they cracked the top 5. I think there's a reality where if you look at the grand scheme of the playoff championship race, I still think they're a top 5 team. Are they probably closer to 4 or 5 in that lineup? Probably. But I think that there's still a team that as long as you have Nikola Jokic, as long as you have the effectiveness of the two-man game of him and Jamal Murray, and you have decent on-ball guard depth with guys like Brown, with guys like Russell Westbrook, right? And you still have the versatility of an Aaron Gordon. They still have the makeup of a team that has to be respected on a championship stage, right? And that's the biggest thing. And I usually don't play this card often because it's always a year-to-year delineation, but they've done it before. And the championship DNA thing, I'm not going to say is necessarily like real with them per se, but there is always something about a team that's been through the mud before that you do have to give them a little bit just due. pair that with the fact that they've done it with a multi-time MVP candidate and winner. This is a team that like has the confidence to say like we have the personnel. The question now is, can we get it done?
100%. I'm excited to see how they're gonna do this postseason. And this is a team that every team. I mean, Kevin Durant said it. The minute this man won MVP, he was no longer underdog. People are gonna be aware of Nikola Jokic, and there's no way they're gonna take a freaking series off against this Nuggets team because they're gonna make you work for it, and they're gonna make you move on to the defensive end. That's for sure. Jay, the number 4 team right now in the West is the Memphis Grizzlies. Another season where they've been dealing with like some injuries here and there, but they're sticking at number 4. Not the most prototypical John Morant type of season, but they still have a really deep bench. They finally got Desmond Bain going. Jaren Jackson Jr. is having one of the best years of his career. But in terms of title contention, what tier do you have them in?
So I have them in the B tier. This is one of those where for me, I'm probably biased by the fact that I'm still a little torn by their lack of movement during the NBA trade deadline. If you remember when we had that conversation around that time, I said that they were one of those teams that I was most disappointed in because it felt like the Memphis Grizzlies left something on the table. It felt like they kind of misinterpreted the understanding of what they have in terms of their title window with the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. Can be a special defensive player for a long time, but he's also a player who plays limited minutes, right? He's a guy who plays sub 30 minutes on a regular basis. He also plays next to a John Morant, who I always compare to my favorite player of all time being Derrick Rose. And we understood and we learned from that experience that the window for a team led by a player that has that kind of play style is not nearly as wide open for as long as you would hope. The level of specialness that he plays with always is going to make you a dangerous threat within the postseason. But how long he can be special like that is always varied by the erratic play of playing so kind of like bowling ball, danger, erratic, the way that John Morant tends to play, right? So the fact that they didn't really improve at the deadline much still makes me worry about them. And they're a team that always kind of is going to be like scrappy and dangerous in a first round, maybe even a second round matchup. But until they get another special on-ball like shot creator or somebody else that can take the pressure off of Desmond Bain and John Morant as real offensive creators, I kind of worry, specifically on the perimeter, because obviously Jaren Jackson Jr. has significantly improved as an offensive threat in terms of being a 3-level scorer. I think he picked up real talent as a 3-level scorer from being by himself a lot of last year with all the crazy injury stuff going on. But in terms of another perimeter threat, I still feel like they need one more guy. We've been saying that. That kind of similar to a few other teams we brought up over the past. That 3 spot, the Cleveland Cavaliers were like this for a while, where we would like bringing up that 3 spot for a while of like, man, they just need a shot creator that can play at the wing. And there were guys available, and they weren't cashed in the way we thought they had the real ammo to go do. And that still leaves a sour taste for me. That makes it where I'm like, I think that's gonna bite them in the butt. I don't know which team is gonna happen against. I don't know, when it's gonna cost them. But I just think that being complacent at the deadline, I think it's gonna cost them, bro. And that's what makes me worrisome about them. But they're still solid though. They're still solid.
They are a solid team, and that is why I have them in the C tier. I felt more confident in them in previous years compared to this year, and that's mostly due to John Morant's play. What version of John Morant are we going to get into playoffs? Because that's going to determine their ceiling going forward here. Because if you remember, his first 2 playoff appearances, this man was all-world. He had a 30-point per game playoffs the first time he was around, and then he had a 8-point per game playoffs when the Grizzlies advanced to the second round. Now, 2 years later, a lot more injuries. This guy's been playing less minutes. He's becoming more of a facilitator, which is good to a certain extent, but that means that they've been using Jaren Jackson as basically their number 1 option all season long. This is not the assertive John Morant on the offensive end that we're accustomed to from when he entered the league. So, if we get the playoff John Morant from years past, I still don't think you can put them alongside, teams who have proven to do so, like the Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Lakers. But a peak John Morant, especially the way we've seen him play in the playoffs, that could push him to a B tier. Now, am I confident in that? No. That's why I'm gonna put them in the C tier right now. I still like you said, I'm still like looking for that kind of that wing player that they've been kind of needing for a long time now. I'm glad that Desmond Bane's getting back into the mix. I'm glad that Jaren Jackson is improving his offensive game as well. But we need to see number one option John Morant. We need to see franchise player John Morant come around if they really want to make some noise in the playoffs. And the other thing I'm kind of worried about too is their big man depth. This is Zach Edey's first playoffs. He's their starting center, and if he's like play off the court like many big centers do, who's left to put there? You're gonna move Jaren Jackson Jr. to the 5 and potentially risk him in like all the foul trouble like he has in every single playoff appearance pass. Who knows? But I think what they've done this like regular season so far, especially with the limiting of minutes, has been good for a team all around. I just need to see like more of that John Morant, the one that we were saying, oh, could potentially be in top 5 MVP candidates from a couple years ago. And I'm not sure if we're gonna be able to see that.
Yeah, I mean, another thing too, it's funny you brought up the center depth thing. Another thing I thought was really interesting that it could be a little bit worrisome, and that actually goes back to the wing depth issue, is that like they've been very reliant on Jalen Wells as a defender on the perimeter too. Like, talk about
And
leaning into
he's been very
rookies.
good. He has been very good.
He's been very good, but two of your like top contributors
Yeah.
going into the season are going to be rookie players that
Rookies.
are going to have to
Yeah.
step up. Yeah, that are going to step up in a real way. Because, like you said, Zach Edey's probably going to have to really play like significant minutes, and then Jalen Wells is probably going to get the hardest matchup again in terms of on the perimeter of anybody
Yeah.
that they end up facing. So that's a tough situation to have two of your top contributors going into the postseason being players that are only going to have been on this stage for the first, or going to be stepping onto the stage for the first time, and that's always tricky, man. I'm not saying that they're not capable. I'm not saying they're not capable of it, but Jalen Wells and Zach Edey could be like two like X factor kind of players. Like when we get to that part, we'll probably end up having that conversation once the seeding is actually set. But like Jalen Wells and Zach Edey are going to be real X factor kind of players when you talk about what the Memphis Grizzlies are capable of doing in a postseason setting.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think like what's like at least helpful for them going forward is that if they do match up with the Rockets in the first round, that's nice. Where it's like kind of they're both on kind of in the same playing field, and then again going up against the Thunder, where you're not going up against those teams with like how would I say like the playoff experience where they can like kind of like um take advantage of like these like certain situations against like a young team like the Memphis Grizzlies and be able to like maybe like take advantage of those like rookies like a Zach Edey and a Jalen Walls. Like if you like face like a Golden State Warriors in the first round, I think that would be like a horrible matchup for them. Them facing like a Clippers in the first round could prove to be some problems if they end up matching up in the second round with the Lakers, that sort of thing. If they go up against young teams like the first round against the Rockets, they can kind of settle into things. And then going forward, with the Thunder and stuff, even though I think the Thunder do end up winning that matchup. But at the same time, there's a lot of pressure on these young guys, and a lot of the guys that you traded away, you were hoping for them to make an impact in the playoffs. Marcus Smart, you brought him in hopefully to make like more of an impact in the playoffs. You traded him away, and then now you're putting a lot of trust into these young guys. It's going to be interesting, but they have the talent, and I think that Taylor Jenkins in the past has been able to get a lot of these young guys. In this playoffs, we have to wait and see. Jay, we're going to move on to the number 5 team in the West, which is the Houston Rockets, who were at number 2 for a good chunk of for a good chunk of like early 2025, but an injury to Fred VanVleet, now an injury to Amen Thompson. Şengün has missed some time. A lot of like the guys who've been playing a lot of this year has been in and out the lineup. They have dropped now to number 5. Where would you put them in the tier list?
Oh man, so can I be honest? I have to be real with you, bro. They've been kind of floating around like C, D tier for me kind of all year, despite how enjoyable they to watch.
Yes.
I'm gonna put some respect on their name for what they've been able to do this season. I'm gonna put them in C tier instead of the D tier. And the reason why is because of how effective they've been able to be as a defensive team this year. And their defensive personnel, although kind of propped up by an Amen Thompson, is also helped by the growth of Jabari Smith Jr. Tari Eason, is still a game wrecker at all times, right? And I think that Ime Udoka simply does coach this team in a way that helps them emphasize a defensive identity led by somebody like an Amin Thompson paired with like a Dylan Brooks and somebody who can anchor on the perimeter in Fred VanVleet, who just can be like a very sound perimeter defender. So this is a team that guards at a high level. The question will be, what does Amin Thompson look like? Because from everything I've seen so far, it doesn't look like he's going to miss like insane time.
He's going to miss
seeing
like the next 10 to 14 days, I think. That's what they said in the report.
I've seen a max of 2 weeks so far, which is a positive sign given the circumstances, right? Because that still leaves time in the rest of the regular season to still kind of revamp before the postseason starts. This is a team that is highly athletic, very, very dangerous in the open floor, guards at a high level, has an all-star caliber center with Alperen Sengun. My biggest fear is that will the stage be too big for Jalen Green? Because I am concerned about that. And B, and probably more importantly, what is this team's bread and butter in the final 2 minutes of a basketball game when you're talking about a 7-game series? That is something that I think has been very interesting, because Houston has been really good in a way that, like, if you look at their point differential, this is a team that actually has been, like, pretty special this year in terms of, like, when you compare it to what their talent is. They've actually been really good at kind of getting teams out the paint when they win. Like, when they win big. But when they lose, it's been a little bit different. Their late game execution has been something I've been a little worried about. And specifically because I don't think they have a go-to guy. And we've kind of always said that, like, they're the team that's blatantly missing the star to put them over the top. It's why Kevin Durant comes up in terms of using the Phoenix Suns picks to trade and get that guy. Or even more so, obviously, Devin Booker's name has floated around significantly. It's for that very purpose. And so my biggest question is, what does late game execution look like for this team where they still don't have anybody that you would say definitively is their go-to guy? Because in my personal opinion, I think Rockets fans would agree, I don't think that Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun have supplanted themselves in any way to say that they are the go-to guy.
They're not number one options. They are not number one options. And here's the thing, Jay. When I look at this Rockets team, I haven't been in D tier, by the way. They are such a strong defensive unit. They are such a strong defensive unit. But Jay, you tell me when you go up and down this roster that this doesn't seem like a team that's just going to be taken advantage of the entire playoff series. You have a slow-footed center in Alperen Sengun, where if you try and get him into space, might be a tough to keep him on the floor. You have some guys there, and Amin Thompson. They're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. You have guys that you can leave open in the playoffs and like, you know what, we'll dare you to hit these threes, and you're probably not going to hit them. They don't have that number. They don't have that go-to guy. Honestly, out of all the guys they have on the floor, I probably trust Fred VanVleet the most in terms of guys at the end of games being able to get a shot off, just because he's done it before. We've seen him take over fourth quarters in the NBA Finals, for goodness sake. Like, if he's like your number one guy at the end of games, that spells trouble for you, especially when you look at the rest of the Western Conference. When we talk about teams like the Grizzlies with a John Morant, we talk about the Lakers with Luka and LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's just not up to par there with the Houston Rockets. When I look at this team, all I see is, I can take advantage of this aspect of your team. I can take advantage of this aspect of your team. And I think this is why I put him in D, bordering on F, just because I just feel like this is the perfect rendition of a regular season team, but there's going to be some holes that when attention is being paid, like when there's attention to detail come to playoffs in a 7-game series, they're going to be taken apart.
I think there's a part of me that agrees with you, but the reason why I put them in C tier is because of something that I think is a little underrated, specifically with this season for the Western Conference. And it's the fact that they're a team that has nothing to lose in this conversation.
Fair.
Because if you think about it, they're able to play the most free of anybody when you talk about not just expectations, but their understanding of what they have ahead of them this offseason. This is a team that has their main guys under contract, right? This is a team that has the potential to have real financial flexibility this upcoming summer. Two of their better wing defenders, and Amin Thompson and Tari Eason, are already locked up. Jalen Green locked up. Alperen Sengun locked up. Dylan Brooks locked up. They have a team option, if I'm not mistaken, on Fred VanVleet, which can either be reconstructed in favor of being able to bring him back on a more affordable contract, or allow him to walk with the potential to open up significant money this offseason. So this is a team that kind of can play as free as possible because they come in expected to be viewed as an underdog in any series. And that's one of those things where sometimes, you don't like playing into the narrative of those things, especially when you're talking about a postseason filled with like insane level MVP superstars, which is what each team we've discussed so far in the Western Conference besides Houston has, because I would say even Ja Morant went healthy, MVP caliber player. Jaren Jackson Jr. probably is going to win DPOY, if not be second place behind maybe at Evan Mobley this year, right? So when you're talking about that caliber of player, like I would make the argument that of every team we've talked about, Houston's the only one that doesn't have one. But I think that's what makes them more potent because they're the team that has nothing to lose. And so it'll be interesting to see what that culminates to, because either that can make it where the moment becomes too big because they're overcompensating for the underdog storyline, or people are going to sleep with them and they're going to come out, punch somebody in the mouth in game one and set a tone that's going to have to be respected.
I see what you mean by that. I think that the team as a whole has nothing to lose. Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun, on the other hand, they're being questioned as like number one or number two options. I mean, we've questioned Jalen Green for years now. And now that he's probably going to be in this position, he wants to prove that he is like could be a number one scoring option as he has seen himself since he's come into the league. He sees people like Kate Cunningham getting the chance, Scotty Barnes given the chance, etc., etc. But he wants to prove that he is going to be on that level. He has, I think, in terms of the team itself, they probably don't have much pressure. But in terms of their top guys and like not being seen as untouchable going forward, I think those are the guys that are going to have like the pressure be put on them. And I think that's where the pressure is going to start to mount on these top guys when they're asked to do more than what they are accustomed to in the regular season. Because regular season hoops, especially since they've been playing from the bottom for so long, this is going to be a whole new world for them. Let's see how they're going to respond, though. Let us know what you guys think down below. The number 6 team in the West, though, Jay, and this team has, they've been on fire today out of Jimmy Butler. The Golden State Warriors have gotten themselves out of play-in purgatory and have now brought themselves to the number 6 seed in the West, 11-1 with Jimmy Butler. They said that this is their, last dance hurrah, trying to figure out how to win a championship in these final 2 years. Jay, where do you put them in the rankings and the tier list?
Man. I'm going to put them in the A tier with it's like the A tier with like wanting to almost put them in S because of a lot of the backdrop stuff. A lot of the off the court motivation aspects of the Golden State Warriors is what makes them like a team that, like, in this structure of the Western Conference, I almost fear them more. I'm going to leave them in A tier. And I think the biggest question for me is going to be, I think it's really just going to be seeing how this team really meshes in a more confined setting. I think that this team has been really special with Jimmy Butler in a way that I think a lot of us couldn't have even anticipated, even if we thought it was a good fit going in, which a lot of us did, and a lot of people were maybe more against the fit, more so because of the fact that they thought Jimmy Butler, there was news that Jimmy Butler didn't even want to be on this team, so the idea was that he was going to be a net negative early on, just off of maybe his attitude towards being traded to the Golden State Warriors. But he's been perfect soldier and has stepped in and has been absolutely as advertised in terms of what he's capable of doing on a championship caliber roster. I think the other thing for them is kind of similar to a lot of stuff I brought up earlier when it comes to just like center depth. Again, just being like, I just wonder if they can get over a Nikola Jokic-led Denver Nuggets team the way we saw years ago, like blitzing him and doing different things like that. Like, I wonder if they can get away with that in 2025. I wonder if they can hang with an Oklahoma City Thunder team, like, in terms of, like, yeah, you can put Jimmy on Shea, but, like, okay, then, like, give me Jalen Williams to have himself a series, because, like, I think that there's nobody else on the Golden State that's capable of containing those two guys. So like it's just little things here and there. The reason why I considered S tier is because of the fact that they are a much more championship caliber roster with kind of similar feelings around the not nothing more to lose aspect that the Houston Rockets had, but like they almost have, they're kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. They have kind of everything to lose. They have like a 2 to 3 year window here that has to be maximized. And so that just makes me wonder like what kind of level they play at, given the fact that like it just matters that much more in this window. So I'm gonna leave them at A tier. Um, but this team, I feel bad. You remember at the very beginning of the episode, I mentioned the concept of teams trying to do seed manipulation. This is the team. This is the team you don't want to see in the first round. 100%. This is the team that you throw a game or two to get out of their warpath. This is the team I think that you want to dodge if you're in the West.
Man, Jay, I'm gonna tell you right now. Coming into this episode, I had this team in B tier, but you've convinced me to go up to A tier. And I think seeing how they've been with Jimmy Butler, the motivations, like you mentioned, going forward. And Jay, the biggest thing and the reason why I feel a lot more confident in this team is the freaking just motivations of a Steph Curry, like, especially ever since this trade, man. I'm going to give you these numbers ever since the trade. This man's averaging 31 points per game, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 47% from the field, 30% from 3. Jay, this is sounding like freaking MVP Steph again.
Yeah.
This is starting to feel like this version of Steph again, finding this new motivation, finding that extra gear in him to try and win basketball games. The fact that they have a championship level coach, Draymond Green, is, not being in headlines besides his podcast being in headlines, but not for his on the court antics this year compared to last year. And the fact that Jimmy Butler has been a freaking good show soldier ever since he's been here. Man, this Warriors team has a new energy about them. And when you combine all these factors and the fact that even their young guys are starting to perform now after a slow start, you would want Jonathan Kuminga in the lineup. You want Brandon Podziemski to be healthy come the playoff run. But as long as you have those three guys, Jimmy, Steph, and Draymond Green, we know what they could do come playoff time. When we talk about freaking playoff races, oh boy, imagine playoff Jimmy with this version of Steph Curry. Oh my goodness, this is the type of stuff that we've been waiting to see. I think that you can put them, hopefully things continue to go this way, hopefully no injuries as well, but you could see them going to that path like the Lakers where you're like, you just have these two playoff performers in Steph and Jimmy that you just don't want to see, and you know that if it does come down to it, you trust those guys at the end of games, which is super important come playoff time.
Yeah, again, this goes back to like the criteria thing, right? Like, do you have an MVP caliber player? Yes. Do you have top level defenders? Yes. Do you have a structured identity that tells you that when you go into a 7-game series, you know what your bread and butter is? Yes. The biggest question for me strictly is going to be how it all assimilates in a 7-game series, right? That we've seen it in the course of a regular season. Some against pitying teams, some against teams that they're going to have to potentially see in the postseason to make a championship run. But the other part of it too, like you said, is the motivation factor. Like there is just something different with their team versus really any of the other teams that we've discussed in the Western Conference when you talk about windows, right? Like, for example, the Lakers, when they traded for Luka Doncic, a lot of people automatically said, oh, this is almost a more future-centered move than it is a this season move. And yes, it's been helpful this year, but I think that it's still a more future-centered move than anything, obviously, acquiring a 25-year-old superstar, right? The Denver Nuggets, they're a team that obviously their championship window is only as wide as Nikola Jokic allows it to stay open. But they're a team that's significantly dangerous and could be dangerous for a long time because of the fact that Nikola Jokic's play style indicates that he's going to be around for a while. The Oklahoma City Thunder, we just kept saying youth the entire time we were talking about them, right? The Memphis Grizzlies, we don't view as dangerously. The Houston Rockets, we don't view as dangerously. This is the team that has the combination of having the MVP caliber talent, the roster construction, for the most part, I still think center is light, but the roster construction and the backdrop of like, get it done now because the window is only but cracked so much. And like that's one of those things where, like again, you it's always dangerous to factor in those other motivations too heavily, but I also can't ignore them when you think about a Western Conference that even though I have OKC clearly in an S tier, it doesn't mean that I think they're just definitively coming out of the Western Conference. I just trust their overall makeup more than anybody else in the postseason right now, barring, obviously them collapsing underneath of the pressure of, being in their only second real postseason since acquiring Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Through these
Yeah,
circumstances, obviously Shea's
yeah,
been a secondary, tertiary guy for Oklahoma City. But I mean, like, as the guy.
yeah. Man, I mean, like this Warriors team. The thing is, we've seen it before. That 2023 finals run where they won the championship, different motivations. People like have written them off. Kind of the same deal here. Jimmy Butler feels written off as well, and you know what a freaking motivated Jimmy Butler looks like. They have all these like factors like going for them at the moment that mix in with the momentum with this win streak that they've been on, basically going 10 for 11. You could feel that the tide is changing there in the Golden State, and now they have like their secondary scoring option, Jimmy Butler. It's going to be real dangerous beside peak Steph Curry, like we're seeing right now. So that should be very interesting. Let us know what you guys think down below. What tiers would you put any of the top 6 of the West? Do you agree, disagree? We want to hear your thoughts below. Moving on to the East, though, Jay. This is where it's going to get interesting. Maybe a bit less interesting down the bottom, but at the top, we got some heavy hitters. Number 1, the Cleveland Cavaliers, number 1 team in the league. Some people thought they might have fallen off by now. Nope, they still have 54 wins. There's honestly a chance where they can reach 65 plus wins this year, getting the best out of Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Darius Garland's back to playing well, and now they added DeAndre Hunter. Jay, what tier are you putting this team in?
I'm putting this team in S tier. And it's because actually I have a video that I'm going to be putting out either today or tomorrow as of when we're recording this about the fact that everybody keeps talking about the purple and gold. I love what the LeBron James and Luka Doncic pairing can do, but let's talk about the wine and gold for a minute, man. This team is on a 14-game winning streak as of when we're recording this.
The third one this season, by the way, the third 12-plus game winning streak this year.
I was going to say, this team has been on a continuous heater over the course of the season where this isn't even the first time that they've done this. And they have everything. The DeAndre Hunter pickup, that was the one for me. That was the one. That was the one for me. Because that's the position we've been talking about, not for a year, not for 2 years. We've been talking about this for a minute. And
ever since they got Donovan Mitchell, yeah.
I would make the argument that and I think we even had this conversation, he might have even been a more perfect archetype of a pickup at that 3 spot than even Cam Johnson was, who we were highly interested in the idea of them trading for, right? So, this is a team that when you talk about Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, arguably 4 guys who could have all made the All-Star team, like as a grouping, right? And then you pair that with the fact that DeAndre Hunter, 6th Man of the Year candidate, still very dangerous as a 3-point shooter, and a dude who might not be an elite level defender or anything, but definitely has the positional size that gives them real versatility at that wing spot to guard multiple positions, right? They shoot the absolute piss out of the ball from 3.
Mm-hmm.
And they have easily, I would say, probably this season, I'm not sure the stats suggest it or not, but easily a top 10 player in the clutch in Donovan Mitchell, who you trust down the stretch of a basketball game, especially in postseason settings. I think that this team is not getting talked about enough, given the fact that they're doing what they're doing right now.
Oh, no, these guys are not getting enough credit. And the way that they're getting the best out of this team, because remember, the narrative last year, we don't know what the fit with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, how Darius Garland's going to fit with Donovan Mitchell. And Kenny Atkinson has figured that all out. They've gotten a pretty relatively healthy year in Max Strus. They've gotten that position filled. Like you mentioned, getting DeAndre Hunter was that missing piece. The position that we've said that they've needed for years, they ended up getting. And now match that with a number 1 offense, a near top 5 defense. How much? I think this is what I can like relate this to was, I wouldn't say the Denver Nuggets of a few years ago, but it's one of those things where it's like, you know what? This team has been doing this all season long. Like, some people are gonna try and make excuses as to why this is not gonna work. But why can't this? Like, why is this not gonna work when it comes to the playoffs? Because maybe they haven't gone as deep as some other teams have, but they have every position covered. And now this is not going to be a case where the whole like onus is on Donovan Mitchell when it comes to creating his own offense in the playoffs. They have multiple guys. They even have Evan Mobley like have an increased role in the offensive end. So when you have all these guys bought into the system, playing both ends of the ball, you have a healthy Darius Garland now to alleviate the pressure so that Donovan Mitchell doesn't have to have the ball every single possession. Because we saw what happened to him versus the Magic last year. Yes, he had some good performances, but when he was the only option, when Darius Garland wasn't hitting crap, then that put a heavy toll on him. So the fact that this whole team is now kind of clicking at the right time, they don't have as much injuries now. They even have one of the best backup point guards in the league in like Ty Jerome. So even like depth is not really much of a concern for this team. They check off all the boxes. We talk about the boxes being checked off. They check off all of them. So it would be wrong not to put him in S tier, and that's why I'm putting him in S tier too.
Yeah, this is a Cavs team that I feel like is not nearly this Cavaliers team is not the team we saw go up against the Knicks. It's not. It's not even. First of all, it's not even close. It's not even close.
Yeah.
In terms of their play style, personally.
Yes.
I also think that it's one of those things where you take that aspect of it out, and you also pair that with the fact that now they've handled their biggest positional hole. Yeah, this team needs more respect, bro. I think people see the streaks and they kind of just like discount them for what they are because the regular season has been devalued so much. But
exactly, that's why.
But we got to start being real, bro.
We got to be real. And this Cavs team, they are amongst the elite of the elite, and they should be treated as such. Speaking of the elite, the defending champion, Boston Celtics, at the number 2 spot. You could see they've kind of checked out at some of the games this year, but you could tell when they have it on, and they're still one of the most dangerous teams in the league. Jay, what tier are you putting this team in?
So this S tier 2, they're obviously the defending champions, and they're coming off of a season, or they're going through a season right now where they look like a team that hasn't fallen off, really. They're under-discussed for the fact that they've kind of established a status quo for themselves in a way, right? Like the Celtics essentially have put themselves in a position where people don't talk about them enough, really more so off of the fact that, like, it's almost become normalized that they're this good. So, I mean, it doesn't really go any deeper than that, if I'm being honest. The Celtics haven't done anything to make you feel like they've fallen off, and they're the defending champions. So until they give you a reason to feel a little wobbly about your stance on them, they have not done anything to make you feel like they're not just as good, if not better, than the team they were last year that made the run. And mind you, this is a team that made that run without Kristaps Porzingis healthy for a majority of said run. So if they have him, completely different wrinkle that other teams they faced off against last season didn't even get to experience.
Yeah, no, plain and simple, this team is as good as advertised. They're doing the usual championship thing where it's like, okay, you know, we can take off some guys here and there, especially because they have a lot of guys who have extensive injury history, aka Kristaps Porzingis. You have guys like Drew Holiday who have missed a couple games, but they have a game plan. It's been working. And honestly, the difference between this year and last year, man, Payne Pritchard is damn good. Payne Pritchard's a damn good player. And if you can, if you have the option to close games with Payne Pritchard, bro, him and Derek White, remember, this is a game without Jason Tatum. Him and Derek White combined for 19 threes in a game. 19. This team knows who they are. They know that they're going to be up the top of the league in defensive because that is the basis of a Joel Mazzulla offense. They are 6th in 3-point percentage, but it doesn't matter because they hit freaking 18 a game. And I've never seen a team more comfortable in what they do, and they don't deviate from it. No one can deviate that from the plan. And we've seen this plan work last year. Who's to say this plan doesn't work this year? They are definitely an S-tier team.
Yeah, I mean, the cherry on top of it, what you said when you talk about the idea of them being a team that does not deviate from their identity, they're also a team that's trusting in every single guy to fall in line with
Everyone.
what it is that
Yeah.
they do. Whatever task, whatever skill set, whatever setup is established for each player, they fall perfectly within that puzzle piece to the point that they like the lack of deviation from the plan is so minuscule that this team, it doesn't matter who you put on the floor, they operate like a well-oiled machine to the point that, like you mentioned, no Jason Tatum, Derek White, and Peyton Pritchard go absolutely hamski from beyond the arc. And this team, same high volume 3-point shooting team, still high level of ball movement, still ability to score within isolation sets. This team is able to still fall within that identity, even without a guy who many would consider still as like a top 5, top 7 MVP candidate this year.
Yeah, and you can even just look at that at the center position. Kristaps Porzingis has missed basically half the season. Luke Cornett and Nemes Queta have just slid in and just done their role. They know exactly what to do within this system. Al Horford has missed quite a few games as well, but at the same time, man, the system is the system. Joe Mazzulla is one of the best coaches in the league. There's no reason to doubt this team until they give you there's some sort of chink in the armor when you come to the playoffs. But as of right now, they're in that tier, and there's nothing much to say more about that. Jay, the number 3 team in the East right now is the New York Knicks. They've been kind of stuck in this position for like what, a month now? It feels like maybe a bit longer than that. They've had some injuries to their top guys for sure. They're currently on a 3-game losing streak. Jalen Brunson's going to be out for the next like week or two. Where do you slide them in the tier list?
C, strong C tier, and it's as simple as you probably think it is. They love beating up on bad teams. They love beating up on bad teams, and when they play good teams, they look shaky. It has not been a good record against good teams this year. The top 4 teams that you have to consider coming out of the Eastern Conference, they have been absolutely whooped on multiple occasions by said teams. And this is a team that I just fear, with everybody playing heavy minutes, Tom Thibodeau-esque, and also already not showing great signs of being dangerous against the teams they're going to have to face in order to make a run, that they have not really given me any real like evidence that like they're going to knock someone off. Now, if they do, cool. I'm not doubting them from the perspective of putting them in D or F tier, or like they're just not in the mix. But like, I just can't put you in the same tier as some of the other teams that we're going to be discussing, whether it's the East or the West, knowing that like I don't know how serious I can take you, given the fact that when I've seen you play against the teams you're going to have to take down to get to the chip, you either flat out like been embarrassed, or you made the game interesting but still didn't win in a way that made me feel like, all right, they'll be fine when postseason comes. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, the Knicks are a tough team because, like you mentioned, very, very, very top heavy, and these guys have played a bunch of minutes. We've seen Jalen Brunson's out with injury already. We know how good he's gonna be in the playoffs. We know how important he is to the overall system. They just got back Mitchell Robinson, and you already know that this man is a freaking ticking time bomb in terms of if he'd be able to play or not in general. I'm going to be a bit more generous and put them in... Do I put them in the B tier? I'm going to put them in the B tier, mostly because I've seen what Jalen Brunson could do in the playoffs, and through thick or thin, I know that this guy's going to be able to power this team through, like, their, even, like, how much they've been affected by injuries or by fatigue. This man's been able to, like, go through last year's playoff run with flying colors. I think the addition of Mikal Bridges is going to help at least alleviate a bit of that pressure on the offensive end. And look, this could be a different team, mostly because of the fact, like, remember last season they went through most of the playoffs without Julius Randle. They're going to have some more people on the team now. They have Karl-Anthony Towns, who's having a resurgence year in terms of being a number 2 option. It's very top heavy, and I think this is very important in the playoffs. But will they run out of gas again? Who knows? But I'm going to be a bit more generous and put them in the B tier.
Fair. I don't have too. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not like too keen on the Knicks this year. I was a lot more excited in the off season just because I thought it was a little bit more interesting what they were able to do with Karl Anthony Towns. And obviously, offensively, they're gonna be able to hang. That part is proven. Offensively, they're gonna be able to hang, but defensively, I sweat on them, and that's the crazy part because I thought that was gonna be the least of their problems given the fact that they have Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby and Josh Hart is an elite level defender on the wing
Yeah,
as well.
but they also have Karl Anthony Towns playing the five for most of the year.
And that's kind of one of those things where I feel like that's poked a real hole in a lot of my imagination around what I thought this team was capable of doing. And maybe that's another part of what's made me so biased towards what I believe is them not being nearly as good as many would hope for coming off the fact that they had such a strong offseason. Is just because of the fact that like I thought that their identity would still be rooted within defense with the cherry on top of having a guy in Karl Anthony Towns that can score the basketball the way he can. But for him to be that level of a detriment where they've fallen off defensively this much, it's super worrisome when you also look at the fact that like it's shown itself on the floor. Like they just cannot hang with the teams that are in their way.
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't put him again. I wouldn't put him in the top 5 contenders in the league, but I still think that offensive talent is going to be hard to defend on most nights. Their defense is going to get a bit of an issue, like you mentioned, them versus the top teams. But I could still see a path for them. I still see a path. Jade, the number 4 team in the East right now is the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis playing at a top 3 MVP level. I feel like he's been number 3 for basically 90% of this season in terms of the MVP candidacy. Damian Lillard's having a solid year. Traded away Chris Middleton to bring in Kyle Kuzma. At least he's injected some sort of some young energy in there. But where would you put him in a tier list?
So I'm going to put them in the B tier, and it's kind of based off of a lot of the logic that I gave when I was giving my little spiel on the Denver Nuggets in terms of, right, like you have an MVP caliber player who's like you always have to consider in a real way when you're talking about championship caliber performances in the postseason in Giannis Antetokounmpo, who like I think in a 7-game series might be the 4th or 5th best player in the entire postseason this upcoming year. Maybe arguably 3rd, but like I think at least in the top 5 of like most dangerous players to watch out for going into this postseason. So that alone puts them at least in the C tier by itself. The B tier part is because I think that Damian Lillard is actually going to be special in this postseason. I just have a feeling that he is going to have himself a real run. And I don't necessarily know if it leads to him raising up to Larry O'Brien, but I do think it's going to be one where we have to reconsider him back in the top 5 and top 7 point guards in the league conversation. Because you have to remember, with the ascension of a lot of these guards over the last couple of years, Damian Lillard's name is starting to low-key get silly in a way that like I'm like starting to really worry about how he's like viewed in the pantheon of point guards as he starts to wane down his career. So I'm not really sure how many more years of like quiet postseasons he can afford. And I think last year, obviously with them both being injured, really kind of tainted our view of him as a postseason performer. I think this year he's going to remind a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I also have him in the B tier, plain and simple. They have a top 3 MVP candidate in Giannis Antetokounmpo, someone who has led his team to the championship already, and you have a proven playoff performer in Damian Lillard, who finally has a full year with this team, has finally found his place next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Those two guys are going to be. You talk about Luka and LeBron as one of the most feared duos in terms of playoff performers. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard are right behind them. These two guys, proven playoff commodities. They have been able to showcase what they've been able to do on what they've done on their own. Imagine what they could do together. This is like where, when you saw the trade for Damian Lillard happen, this is the type of scenario you want to see happen. This is the type of environment you want to see them play in. So I'm glad that they're able to finally do it after a full season together. I am kind of worried about the rest of their roster in general because if one of those guys even misses a game or two, this could spell the end of their playoff run in general. But if these two guys are on, I'll find it hard pressed. Even the top teams like the Cavs and the Celtics be able to stop these two guys on in a full series. So I'm gonna put them in the B tier, right next to the Knicks. I'm more worried about the rest of the team too. I still feel like they're very top heavy themselves. but I do think that they are. But as long as they have Giannis and Dame healthy, they're gonna be a threat.
Kyle Kuzma acquisition is going to be the one that'll be the most interesting. That's going to be the one that
He's been solid
because
ever since he came in.
he's been good. And the question it's the same question we had when the actual trade happened is like, how will Kyle Kuzma perform when he plays for a team that is playing for something meaningful again? And so the playoffs is going to be a better illustration of exactly what that fit really is, right? Like while he's assimilating during the regular season, that's its own version of just getting used to the roster. But the question is going to be how Kyle Kuzma readjusts to playing championship caliber basketball when they step back on that stage of playing in postseason play. So I think that's my biggest intrigue, really. But the thing that I think the thing that puts me in the most that makes me the most confident in them is mainly the fact that that Giannis is who he is, and that I think Dame is about to have himself. I think he's about to have himself a player.
Yeah, those two, like I mentioned, right behind Luka and LeBron as one of the more dangerous duos in terms of playoff performers. Maybe Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray kind of neck and neck with them. But having those two on the court, again, find a hard press to see if anyone is going to stop down a 7-game series. But they should be definitely like a threat, and they're going to provide anyone in the East a tough series nonetheless. Jay, the number 5 team in the East right now, the Indiana Pacers, started the season pretty slow. They've been solid. They've brought themselves back up into at least a top 6 seed. But where do you put them in terms of just being there as a title contender?
Where did I play Houston? D tier, right?
Do you think
So
C or D tier? I think you put them in C.
I think it was like C tier, C D. I think I did C tier for them being nice. So I'll do the same thing, kind of similar for Indiana with like C tier. But it's kind of the same argument with Houston to me. It's just not nearly like as much of a youthful complex. It's more of the fact that like I said it a bunch after the postseason was over. And I think a lot of people kind of felt it, but like we just were waiting for it to kind of really culminate. Is that like I just think they were a flash in the pan. I believe, and I still feel this way, that run that they went on was all just them being, what's the opposite of victims of circumstances? Opportunists, right?
Yeah, ultimate
Um,
opportunists. Yeah,
ultimate opportunist, I guess is the way we would phrase it. I think this was a team that wasn't really as good as everything played out. And I think that this is a team that in the Eastern Conference that's much more competitive at the top, they are just not. I don't fear them in comparison to a lot of the other teams that we've already talked about. It's not close to me.
I'm gonna put them in. I'm gonna put them in D tier just because I feel like they are worse than last year, and I think that with the amount of talent that there is out east now, especially with a Knicks team who was very much improved on the offensive end, hopefully a healthy Giannis and Dame going into the postseason, the Cavs and Boston being like top tier title contenders, they feel like they're just gonna get lost in the mix. Tyrese Halliburton has been on and off this year, not just on his play, but also with injuries. Pascal Siakam has been very good, but also, do you trust him to be a number 1 guy or like a number 1 scoring option in the playoffs to try and get you further? Probably not. I just don't have a lot of confidence in this team. I felt like they've kind of deviated from what made them really good last year. They've been solid, but it's also and due to the fact that a lot of the East has been falling off past further down than what they expected. So I think the Pacers just kind of like fell back into 5th place. I'm glad they've been able to pick things up. I think that there's still not going to be any sort of pushover in the playoffs, but I don't feel confident in them winning, honestly, any series going into, especially if they're facing against a Bucks team or a Knicks team. I don't feel confident in them like being able to make it to the next round. So give me them in D tier.
Yeah, I mean, I think my like closing thing on Indiana is kind of like the fact that I feel like they're ultimate opportunists this year. Like, if I'm being honest with you, if I'm being all the way real, are they better than Orlando if they're fully healthy?
This season, for like the way that they've been playing this season, probably not.
You know what I mean? Like, are they better than Atlanta if they don't blow everything up and Jalen Johnson doesn't go down with
Okay,
season-ending injury.
that's a bit more comparable, but I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
You
I
know
know
what I'm
what you,
saying? Like I'm not even saying I'm not even saying they're definitively worse, but I'm saying think about now where the levels are. Because where do we view Atlanta, even with Jalen Johnson? I don't think we would view them as anything higher than C tier in a playoff setting where we're talking
yeah.
about championship quality either, right?
Mhm.
So if I don't think they're any better than a fully healthy Hawks team pre-trade deadline, but I view the Orlando Magic fully healthy as significantly better, that goes to tell you that like how little like credence I can really give this team going into the postseason. I just don't think that what they did last year is duplicable, and I think that they have more holes than they have been willing to address over the last season and a half.
I would have been a lot more confident with his team. I even would have put him in the C tier if we got all NBA Tyrese Halliburton on the roster like we've got last year. But going into this season and seeing the way he's been able to drop off, solid team still. I don't feel confident in their top guys being able to perform and making this a deep playoff run. So yeah, D tier for me. Going on to number 6, the Detroit Pistons, the shock of the season, who are probably going to be clinching a 16 at this point because 7th and 8th don't want it whatsoever. They're like 6 games behind now. But yeah, Jay, they're going to have a guaranteed playoff spot. Where do you put the Pistons in the tier list?
So the Pistons, I gotta put them in like D tier, and they're the only team that I
Yeah,
think I can definitively put in D tier, and it's just because like claps up for the great season. Obviously, I am riding on my high horse as a guy who predicted that they would definitively make the playoffs, and they still. I said
you're right. You're going to be right. Yeah.
I think I said on our first real rant segment that like I'm taking them to like not just make the postseason but just like lock up the top 6 spot. And I mean they are far and away ahead of Atlanta and Orlando for that. So and at the beginning of the season, before the season even started, this was a team that I picked that I said had a real chance to make the postseason this year. Mission accomplished. Anything past that? Nah. Nah, but I will tell you this though, they're an interesting first round matchup against the Knicks.
I think
They're
that's going to be a fun series.
I think
Fun series.
I think that's actually a much more interesting series than people are willing to give credit. And for what it's worth, coming off the conversation that we just had, the likelihood of it is very low, just given the fact that like there's a lot of bouncing around that has to happen. But if there's a world where like the Pistons face the Pacers in the first round, granted, the only way they could really organize that is if either the
Milwaukee
Bucks
drops to
go on
6.
one.
They have to drop to 6 or something, right?
Yeah, pretty much they have to put themselves in a position where like the Pacers have to jump and the Pistons have to jump. But if I'm the Pistons and I catch the Knicks or I catch the Pacers in the first round,
It'll be interesting.
feeling a type of way. I'm feeling a type of way if I go into a series like that.
I think here's the thing with this team, right? This is a team filled with guys who, like Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. These were scraps up from like former playoff teams, right? And they found their roles here in Detroit, and they're pretty much excelling in those roles. Without a secondary option, like a secondary scoring option, really, Jalen Duren, who I don't know how his play is gonna translate into the playoffs. My only saving grace here is Kate Cunningham, and I'm also gonna put him in D tier. But like you mentioned, a matchup against the Pacers, dare I say upset? Sure, the Pacers have a more well-rounded team and a team who's been here before, but I trust Kate Cunningham to potentially bring the Pistons over the top. Against the other teams, I'm a lot more hesitant on. But if there's a matchup against the Pacers coming up for them in the first round, they could be a surprise second round team. But at the end of the day, this team coming off probably one of the worst seasons in franchise history, the season with the 27, 28 game losing streak, coming back here again, ultimate opportunist in the sense where all the teams that we thought that were going to be in this position, like the Philadelphia 76ers, the Orlando Magic, and stuff like that, they have fallen off a freaking cliff, and they've been able to take advantage. It's more of like a matter of circumstance that they've been put here more than anything. And I love Kate Cunningham. I love the way he's been playing this year. And if he's able to translate what he's done this season, which is probably an All NBA caliber season, into the playoffs, maybe we might, that might raise some eyebrows for the Pistons going forward. But as of right now, too many question marks, too many young guys you have to rely on, and a lot of guys who's having career seasons don't typically show up in the playoffs, like I mentioned with the Tim Hardaway Jr.'s, the Malik Beasley's, Tobias Harris's. There's just too many things going against them. I hope Kate Cunningham shows out, but I gotta put him in D tier.
It's the Pistons, man. At this point, they're already punching above their weight. So I think season's successful. I think is the
hey, look, if we're talking about a team with nothing to lose, this is the ultimate team with nothing to lose here.
True. No,
you know what? Let's put him in C. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not gonna put him in C tier. But at the end of the day, this team, they're just happy to be there. If they take even a couple games off, that's like crazy for like what we thought. Even at this point, like them taking off a couple games from anyone in the first round would be pretty interesting too. So they're gonna be a fun team. I think they're gonna be a team where, again, all season long, you haven't been able to push around the Pistons. They're gonna bring that energy to the playoffs. Freaking Isaiah Stewart's probably gonna get into a fight in the first round. Let's be completely honest. But we're gonna see how it goes. Let us know what you guys think down below. Do you agree with the tier list from Eddie, from the East or the West? Do you agree, disagree? Let us know down below. Jay, it's time for us to end the show. It is time for At the Buzzer, the segment where we want to throw in a last-minute segment. Anything you want to get off your chest before we end today's episode. Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. What do you want to say? Your final thing you want to say before the buzzer sounds?
So the final thing that I want to say actually is in relation to some current news, which is that it is Zach LaVine's birthday as of us recording this. It is his birthday in particular. Shout out to Zach LaVine, who has been on an absolute tear so far this season, even dating back to his earlier Bulls tenure prior to the trade.
Did he just win Player of the Week recently for the Kings?
I think he's coming off a Player of the Month, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Kings recently. So he's been in a real special position for the Kings, who are sitting in the ninth spot right now. He's averaging nearly 24 points per game, so he's getting back into real form. 4.1 rebounds per game, 3.9 assists. And I think the biggest thing for me that's standing out is my boy is shooting 41% from three on volume, near the high volumes for his career at 7.5 attempts. Shooting 51.5% from the field. That actually is the best of his career so far, which is a very, decorated career of him mainly finishing as a dunker and high-level three-point shooter. So the fact that he's shooting so well on high volume is great. And I just wanted to kind of put that out there that my boy Zach LaVine is performing in a real way with the Sacramento Kings, because when you go down the list of different acquisitions that were made at the trade deadline, this one in particular fell under the rug in a real way, right? The De'Aaron Fox aspect of that trade has been highlighted more than the Zach LaVine element of that trade, let alone everything else that has happened. The Anthony Davis, the Luka Doncic, the fact that Kevin Durant was on the trade block, right? All of these other things that supplanted the fact that Zach LaVine reunited with DeMar DeRozan in a different city. And I think the biggest thing that I focus on when it comes to Zach LaVine is, I think we had this conversation around the time that the trade happened, was that we felt a way about Zach not playing in a situation where he could show off his talent while playing for a team that really is championship caliber, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said for a team that really wants you. And for those who don't know, the Sacramento Kings have wanted Zach LaVine for like the better part of the last 4 years. Actually, when he was last up for a contract extension, it was between the Bulls having to match the contract offer that, ironically enough, the Kings gave him, right? So this is an organization that has wanted him for a while. And I think the fact that he is in a organization that not only has a real chance to at least be a real threat, because I think this is a team that wants to move forward. I think the Bulls, by hook or crook, they're going to have to take steps backward, right? But the Sacramento Kings, with the way their franchise has been, all they want is to move in a forward direction, something that can be built upon. So the fact that this is a team that has the building blocks to step forward, while also being an organization that has desperately wanted him in their building, you can see that it's wearing on him in a way that's not wearing on him, excuse me. You can see that he's wearing it well, that he is playing much more free and happy than we've seen over the last year and a half. I'm glad to see that for him because at the end of the day, man, he's one of my favorite players, Bulls player or not. Zach LaVine became like a top 5, top 7 favorite player of all time of mine following the initial first dunk contest win that he had. And he will forever be one of my favorite players in the league until he retires. So, shout out to him. Happy birthday, 30th birthday, and a guy who has been on an absolute tear.
Shout out to Zach LaVine, man. He's having a great season. Definitely under the radar. I just have to double check. He actually just won Player of the Week. Player of the Month was LeBron James last month. So shout out to LeBron.
So it was Player of the Week. Okay.
Yeah, Player of the Week. But yeah, shout out to him. He's been great for the Kings. Honestly, all they need is the Montes Sabonis back, and they can actually make a push for at least a top 8 seed this year. So hopefully that can be done. He's having a great season. Again, happy birthday to Zach LaVine. Jay, for my at the buzzer. Jay, well, I feel like we haven't talked about this guy enough this year, mostly because he's coming off of injury. But I can't believe the first time I'm bringing him back into conversation, it's to really, give him his props. Gee, the Timberwolves are 10-0. In the last 10 games that Julius Randle has played.
Hey, man, I wasn't sure if this was going to be the podcast for it, but he has kind of been open.
And the thing is, like, this is the type of Julius Randle we wanted to see when he came to the Timberwolves, right? Because we knew whose ball is at the end of the day. It's Anthony Edwards' ball. He's the one who's the number one guy. He's the number one option, and this and that. Yeah. What we know from Julius Randle in the past is that he's an underrated playmaker. He is able to operate on the high post a lot. And recently he's talked about wanting to do what's best for the team and kind of fill in the gaps where the team needs him most. And to be honest, him not scoring his usual, 22, 23 points per game has been very beneficial to the Timberwolves team. He's fit in a lot better. They've won a lot more games. Like, a lot of people have been talking about the Warriors lately ever since the addition of Jimmy Butler. But the Timberwolves are right behind them, man. We would have, if it was like one game here and there, we would have been talking about the Timberwolves instead of the freaking Warriors for this video. And Julius Randle being able to, come back from his injury, be able to kind of transition to a new role, especially as one of the more coveted free agents this coming off season. He's shown that he has multiple facets to his game, and that people who are worried for him being a ball stopper coming into the Timberwolves, he's shown that he has levels to his game and that he is able to still contribute in a huge way.
Yeah, I think that Julius Randle is going to be. You remember I mentioned earlier I was talking about X factors going into the playoffs. That's probably a video. That's probably a podcast that we have set very close to when the actual seeding is all set. And Julius Randle is easily going to be mine, for sure, when we talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves when everything is said and done, because of the fact that I think that if he can have a strong postseason, they are still a scary team to watch out for. The thing has been, we haven't seen a strong postseason from Julius Randle. Actually, we have more evidence of him folding in the postseason than we've even seen him putting a handful of games together to think there's a semblance of an elite level postseason performer in him. So
it also doesn't help that the Knicks last year probably played better when he didn't play going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's more evidence that says that he is a playoff regressor and acts more as an anchor and a detriment than he is a net positive. So the fact that he's been playing this well is helpful. The question is going to be with him. And it's funny talking about a player that's been an all-star before, has been an all-NBA caliber guy before as well, and talking about him as a guy that we have to wonder about performing in front of the bright lights, kind of similar to how we talked about the younger players, Jalen, the Jalen Greens, the Jalen Wells, Zach Edey, guys like those. It's maybe not on the exact same level, but it is one of those things where you have to wonder what a good Julius Randle series even looks like.
Yeah, 100%. That's something to definitely look out for if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. But if you're seeing him and the way he's playing right now, this man's averaging 9, almost 10 assists per game over his last 3. He's bringing that point forward mentality over there, and he's opening the game up for people like Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels, who's been awesome, especially in the second half of the season. They also have a very strong bench. We didn't talk about the Timberwolves earlier. We definitely have to talk about them in the future because they've actually been finally turning up. But yeah, Julius Randle, shout out to him. He's finally finding his role in this team, and he's actually being more into the like fitting himself more into the role of like into the flow of the offense rather than being that ball stopper, which we saw very early in the season. So shout out to Julius Randle. That's my thoughts for at the buzzer. Let us know what you guys think down below on what you on like what Julius Randle's doing, but also on Zach LaVine and his like awesome start with the Kings as well. Jay, we have now reached the end of the episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these people before we have to sign out?
Oh, I've been trying to kind of put the gas pedal on this one a lot at the end of every single episode, so I'm going to just kind of keep reiterating it until the time actually hits. As we close in on April, man, postseason time is going to be in full effect, and that was one of our best times last year, not just in terms of being, NBA fans, but especially from a content creation perspective. We were just in full flow state covering every single game of every single series, and I'm excited to get into that again and maybe even kind of change the format in a way where we can be even more in-depth and even more nuanced in terms of like giving our insight and giving our view on just like how each of these games play out. And so I'm just very excited and looking forward to the postseason because of the fact that obviously high-level games, high-level performers, every game matters. The content is going to be even more diversified in terms of the social medias. Check out all the short-form stuff because that's where a lot of that stuff's going to be. So I'm excited, man. I think that a lot of people have kind of downplayed this season. There's been a lot of drama around the retention of NBA fans in relation to like how this season has been viewed. I think the postseason is going to be the culmination of all of the hard work that was put in between the trade deadline, a lot of these teams kind of putting in pain throughout the year. And it's going to be one of those things where a lot of teams that maybe weren't getting a lot of respect in terms of the national media are going to get seen on the grander stage. A lot of players who I think we have a lot of respect for get to put themselves back in the forefront in terms of us viewing them as all-stars and all-NBA caliber dudes. Like there's a lot of different storylines to favor going into the postseason. And the mundaneness of the regular season and how downplayed it is being over or near over. I hate to say I'm looking forward to it finally ending because I personally hope for more respect for the regular season. But I think specifically in a year like this where I think the regular season was so bypassed, I can't wait for the playoffs to make sense of why this regular season actually was much better than than a lot of people viewed it as.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, there's been so much like being talked down about the NBA basketball so far this year. We talked about it in the last episode, but I really hope that this playoffs really show out and really like kind of like put a reminder to people that NBA basketball is great, and this is why you should be tuning in every single year, and this is why you should be tuning into the Hit Your Free Throws podcast every single week, man. We talk about all this stuff. We try to talk about all the good stuff that comes with the game, and I think we did that today. I think we had a great episode. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Continue to support Hit Your Free Throws through all our links. Jay and I will be back next week for another episode. So yeah, hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV, this is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.